All right, we're joined by Azam this morning, researcher from IDEAS for Frontpage. Good morning, Azam.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning for Frontpage.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have you been good?
I've been very good.
Great. All right, let's get to our first article. Recent Auditor General's report reported that China's military actually encroached into Sabah and Sarawak waters in the South China Sea 89 times from 2016 to 2019. Now, Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Hishamuddin Hussein said that he fears that any little incident or accident that happens on the South China Sea could lead to war. And since we, Malaysia, we're part of the South China Sea, what can our government do to prevent these incidents from happening again?
Well, I think Malaysia as an individual country, coming against China and their claims over the South China Sea, I think individually we don't really have much ability to really contest these things.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Malaysia has the sovereignty over the waters. There are some territory that's within the sovereignty of Malaysia that's within dispute because of China's claims over these lands. But I think internationally, the convention that applies is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which is a 1982 international agreement that kind of defines the rights of countries to the world's oceans, depending on the location of the ocean. It also kind of demarcates stretches of waters that are exclusive economic zones where countries are given the right to exclusively tap on the economic resources of these oceans, fish, fuel. So this UN convention sets out kind of the legal framework within which all activities within the ocean and the seas must be carried out. So this is kind of like the international convention. But, against such a large superpower like China, Malaysia as an individual state doesn't really have much power when it comes to these kind of disputes. When you look at it regionally, this is where kind of ASEAN plays a larger role. Most of the ASEAN states are within this disputed territory. And if they kind of, band together as one and kind of negotiate on these processes as a group, then they have more power to really, contest any international issues, any issues over sovereignty. But I think as an individual country, Malaysia doesn't really have much. I think the most important thing here is for Malaysia to remain neutral within, in the foreground of all these issues is a battle between two major powers.
All right, let's get to our second article. Drunk drivers will face stiffer penalties once the cabinet approves amendments to the law. So will these harsher penalties deter driving under the influence, Azam, you think?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, they will. So the penalties will increase, stricter, longer jail times, longer times that the license will be revoked. I think the harsher penalties as a matter of deterrence will at the end of the day matter in the sense that it increases the perceived punishment for doing the crime, in this case, driving under the influence. And therefore, this will decrease kind of an individual's intention to commit the crime, because that by nature will also mean the intention to, inflict the punishment onto themselves.
Yeah. I mean, in your opinion, between the enforcement of law and education or social responsibility, what would be a better deterrent?
Well, that's a good point, because another important aspect on deterrence is also on the legal enforcement side. So because the level of perceived certainty of punishment also has a strong effect on deterrence of a crime. I think citing a study, the authors of the study found that kind of moral beliefs against drunk driving are kind of an effective source of not committing that crime.
Right.
But your question between enforcement of laws or moral values or this sense of civic mindedness or social responsibility, I think they're both important, but you kind of have to move in gradual steps, or like in steps, which isn't to say that one is better than the other, or that the former should take precedence over the latter, but simply that you must have the laws in place in order to set kind of the legal foundation for this feeling of moral obligation. So citing another study, in the US, they look at the experience of combating DUI, and their experience shows that there is this gradual process which started from kind of general deterrence policies. These include, laws that punish convicted drunk drivers. And then over time, this strategy kind of evolved to include efforts to tackle kind of on the alcohol side. So this includes like minimum age laws to drinking, and then also through mass communication campaigns. So these campaigns would include, general awareness. Hopefully it would result to kind of individual behavior changes, such as, the idea that you need to have a designated drivers when you go out. These are things that come afterwards to actually having implemented the laws and the punishments for the crime. So, yeah, sorry, it's kind of a non-answer, but both of them are important, but one comes after another.
Oh, so you have to have the law first, and then you have to educate everyone on civic mindedness and social responsibility for it to work.
Yes, I mean, effectively they should go hand in hand, but it's laws first and then the awareness.